Oh, someone's put a bike in. Here's the Bob Dylan bike.
You are now standing in front of England's oldest visitor attraction. The earliest record and reference to it was nearly 500 years ago in 1538, when it was visited and written about by a member of Henry VIII's staff. It was originally known as the Dripping Well, and then became known as the Dropping Well in the 1800s. It was first put on exhibition and tours conducted around it in 1630. For centuries, people came to the well, but not just to view it. They showered and bathed in its waters, as they believed them to have miraculous healing powers. The well is a huge mineral deposit, over 100 foot wide and 100 foot deep. It is formed the same way as a stalagmite or stalactite, from crystallized mineral deposits dissolved in the waters. The waters are very special. They come from a huge natural lake a mile underground. On their way to the surface, they seep along a special layer of rock called an aquifer, from which they dissolve massive amounts of minerals, mainly calcium carbonate and sodium sulfate. The layer of rock called an aquifer breaks the surface about 100 feet above the well. The waters pour out and over the top here at a rate of 700 gallons. That's over 3,000 litres an hour. Winter, summer, rain or drought. The flow comes from so far underground and from such a huge lake, it's not affected by anything that goes on up here on the surface. The waters have the highest mineral content of any petrifying well in Europe. These were the results of tests conducted recently. So this well is officially the oldest, the biggest, and the best. The well is made of two types of rock. The pale grey rock at the back is a porous rock called tufa, and makes up the majority of the well. Where the water flows down the front, it forms a more compact rock called travertine. In Victorian times, this was cut and polished to make orange jewellery. There are examples of both rocks on display in the museum. Another centuries-old tradition is to hang things under the magical waters to watch them turn to stone. In the old days, they used to hang wigs and dead animals. Now we use soft toys and our famous teddy bears, which are shipped all over the world. It only takes 3 months to turn a teddy bear completely solid. Compare that to the growth of a stalactite. The two lumps you can see sticking out halfway up the rock face are a gent's top hat on the left and a lady's Victorian bonnet on the right, recorded as being left here to petrify in 1853 and never collected. Many items have been donated for petrification by TV programmes and celebrities. Emmerdale, Coronation Street and Blue Peter. We also have a hat belonging to John Wayne, a handbag belonging to Agatha Christie, and a shoe left by Queen Mary when she visited the park in 1923. It's on display in the museum. Of course, No exhibition of petrified objects would be complete without an item left by famous magician Paul Daniels and Debbie McGee from when they were involved in the park. Despite its fearful reputation,
You'll enter this legendary cave where over 500 years ago a baby was born. Little did her mother know that her child would become so famous that millions of people would visit this cave, a birthplace she only used out of desperation. The baby was named Ursula and was reputedly born disfigured and twisted. Knaresborough townsfolk heard about the birth and started to say that a witch had been born in the cave next to the magic well. Mother and daughter lived in this cave for 2 years until eventually the Abbot of Beverley heard the rumours and intervened. The mother, Agatha, still would not reveal the father's identity and volunteered to spend the rest of her days in a convent in Nottinghamshire. The father was never traced. The abbot found a sympathetic family in Knaresborough to provide a home for the young Ursula. As she grew into a young woman, it was clear she was very different. Her spine was twisted, her shoulders hunched, and she was unable to walk without the aid of a stick. Her facial features fared little better. The earliest recorded description was that her nose and chin were so hooked and so prominent that they nearly touched like a pair of nutcrackers. The statue of Mother Shipton at the back of the cave is based on those early descriptions. Because of her appearance, she was constantly taunted by townsfolk who thought she was a witch. For peace and quiet, daily, she would walk in the deserted King's Forest, picking the many wild herbs and flowers that still grow in this area, and to visit and spend time at her birthplace in and around this cave. As a young woman, she quickly realized she had a gift. She could predict the future. Nowadays, she would be classed as a psychic. She predicted small local events at first, but she developed her powers almost as quickly as her reputation spread. People travelled miles to visit her here in the cave and ask her what the future held for them. Bearing in mind that in those days there were no proper roads, telephones or postal services, and this was a time when London was a week's journey away from Knaresborough. It showed how famous she had become when her reputation eventually reached the royal palace. Henry VIII heard stories of the hag in Yorkshire who could see into the future. 3 members of the king's staff were dispatched to Yorkshire, disguised as peasant travellers, to seek out Mother Shipton, find out if she really could see into the future, and report back.